I don't know what that is. Walk away.
Yeah. It's just taking a little bit of time.
Make sure you mute the YouTube feed or close that tab. I'll check and make sure it's on.
Thanks, guys, for supporting me in my endeavors to do my job.
Laura, since she's in
Laura.
Don't tell me what to do. Let's start the video. Uh-oh. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
The one on top. I don't know how to switch it to.
You hover over the commission folder, you'll have the option to pin.
Oh, no, but I think I want to switch it to the color.
Oh, yeah.
That thing is in the way. Oh, there you go. Oh, yes, we'll just do it. Okay.
Laura, how is our audio? You hear us just fine?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Well, you want to use Owl or this?
I wanted to use the outlet.
Is it showing up on there?
Oh, that's right. I went to the wrong corner.
Okay. Okay, but wait now, hang on. How do you want your speakers and microphone? Right now, these are acting as your mic. Do
That's
you want
fine.
the Owl to be your?
No, I like it better.
Laura, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
Super great. That's good enough. I'll shut my mouth. Thanks, Clay. I appreciate it. So the time is 4:31. I'm going to call the July 14th regular meeting of the Grand County Planning Commission to order. First up, we have citizens to be heard on non-public hearing related items. Is that you, Kate? Super. So if you would, please come up, state your name for the record, and fill us in.
My name is Katie Murphy. I'm going to pass around a couple copies of this. Unfortunately, I didn't print them for staff, but I should have enough. So this is a document that I worked on as a Vista in the planning department last year. The project was to update the landscaping ordinance, update the landscaping section of the land use code. I spent about a year working on that project. I met with various experts related to landscaping, fire safety, flooding, stormwater infiltration, weeds, all kinds of areas that could potentially be covered by a landscaping ordinance. And put in a lot of work, got pretty close to completion, presented this ordinance several times to this committee, also presented it to county commission. And then my term ended, close to the end of my term, we decided that it would be inappropriate to push through the sort of finalizing of the draft while we didn't have a director in the planning and zoning office. And so we decided to hold off on it. My term ended, and this was sort of left hanging. Several of the staff members of planning and zoning have, attempted to get this moving again, but there's been a lot going on this year. So understandably, we haven't seen it in a while. About a couple months ago, Commissioner McCandless contacted me saying she wanted to bring this back. I was really excited about that. We had a couple meetings, discussed this together. But I was under the impression that this was not a priority for the commission and that it would be a while before this came back up. I was really surprised to learn yesterday that there is a landscaping ordinance update on the agenda for planning commission to look at. Checked it out. It's very boilerplate. It's completely different from the landscaping ordinance that I spent a year working on. I wanted to talk a little bit about some important differences that I see and make the request that this be tabled so that I have time to work with Commissioner McCandless to integrate the two ordinances together and create something that works better for our county and avoid several pitfalls that I see. So to start out, the most important thing that probably staff will present about is the fact that this ordinance that is being put forward is mentions the 5 sort of bare minimum things that the Utah Water Savers program will require in order for our county to qualify for the turf buyback program. So in that sense, yes, it does accomplish allowing residents to be able to replace their turf and get some money for that. That said, the Utah Water Savers program is something that exists for all of Utah. And there's a lot of issues that are specific to Grand County that are really not addressed by these specific requirements that the Utah Water Savers puts out that really do belong in a landscaping ordinance for Grand County. One of the main things that I worked on in the Grand County specific ordinance was really thinking about issues like wildfires, like what's going on right now. Flooding, which we've been having worse and worse every single year. The heat island effect, which is only going to get worse. All of these things really should be addressed by a landscaping ordinance. And it would be a huge failure in terms of putting ourselves in jeopardy to wildfire, flood, dust, all these pretty serious public health issues if we don't address this in this ordinance. Furthermore, beyond what's included, I just think that there's some basic things that need to be included no matter what in any kind of an ordinance, such as laying out the procedure for application and review of proposals. That is really just, there's not very much depth here that I'm seeing. In the agenda item, there is section 6.4.3, general requirements, A, landscaping and site plan. We just have 4 bullet points about how the process of applying for site plan permission would go. It's really basic. There's a lot of things here that if I were a developer or an owner trying to build something on my property and I needed to know how I could comply with this landscape ordinance, it's very unclear to me. So I think that puts a big burden on developers, puts a burden on owners, people who are trying to build things. I think we need to be a lot more clear about what we're asking. It also puts a burden on staff in terms of reviewing, because this is really quite vague. That puts a burden of sort of opinion on staff that really shouldn't be staff's responsibility. Staff should be able to go through a checklist that's already provided and check the site plan against the checklist and really be able to make sort of an administrative decision about the process. And I could go on about specifics, but I won't. My request is just to table this, and I'd be really happy to work with Commissioner McCandless and anybody else who wants to push this forward. I understand there's urgency. I wanted to see this pass a long time ago, and I'd be happy to prioritize that myself in my free time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Any other citizens to be heard? Dan, I see you're online. Are you here as a citizen to be heard or just an observer?
Just an observer.
Super, thanks, Dan. We're going to move on to ex parte communications and disclosures. I have one that isn't exactly ex parte, as it were. It's not officially relating to business on the agenda, but I wanted to let the rest of the commission know that Grand County administration has retained a firm called Slavin Consultants to find and recruit a planning and zoning director. The Grand County HR department asked me to sit down with Slavin Consultants and chat with them for about an hour about what traits I thought would make a successful planning and zoning director. And so I did meet with them and talked a little bit about the type of person who we think would be successful here. These were my own opinions, not the stated opinions of the Planning Commission. But I focused mainly on a willingness to work with inside rural cultures, how Grand County isn't really like a downtown Moab scene. Basically, the upshot was like, when folks show up in Grand County and say, hey, I'm from Jackson, you can trust me. That doesn't really work for us. And they were extremely receptive, and I worked with a few consulting firms in various capacities. I'm pretty impressed with the time and attention that these folks are giving to making sure that they find the right kind of person for the job. So just wanted to let you guys know that we had that conversation, and if you likewise would like to share your opinions, I'm sure that they would be able to make the time. You can probably coordinate that through Grand County administration if you want. that's their time, their consulting contract, but I wouldn't stop you from asking to do that if you wanted. Aaron, did you have an
Oh,
expert?
I had just talked to Katie about this whole landscaping ordinance. That's all the disclosure I talked to her about.
I have one.
Sure.
So I own some overnight accommodations, so I'm gonna recuse myself from that discussion.
Super. Likewise, circling back, when we get to water efficient landscaping, as is stated, the water efficient landscaping ordinance's stated intention is to allow residents to buy into the Utah Water Savers program. That program is now a DNR fund. That's Department of Natural Resources money that they will be getting. So I have to recuse myself from any discussion regarding the county's attempts to access DNR money because I'm DNR water guy. So we're just going to sidestep that one entirely. Probably not sure if that recusal is absolutely necessary, but we do this all in good faith, and so I'm just going to be abundantly cautious on that one. Okay, yeah. Any other ex parte communications? I wait for that one every single time. Jerry, did we approve the meeting minutes? No, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July.
I didn't update I didn't add them to the packet. I spent a lot of time writing them and then didn't add them to the packet, so we have to wait till next time when you guys get to approve 3.
Okay.
Jerry, set aside some time.
Maybe we can just approve, I'm just being silly. We can approve all the meetings, one meeting annually and just approve them.
I think it's great.
I like that. It's one of
Be a
the
very long meeting.
one of the funnier aspects of Robert's rules about approving what we already do. So, moving on, the planning and zoning staff update. Chrissy,
Yes. Okay, so I have Andrew Jackson here.
Yes.
He is contract planner for Rocks. He's been helping me out on a number of projects, a few that are on the agenda tonight.
I could just explain a little bit about my background in that. Grew up mostly in Orem, went to BYU to be a planner, geography planning. Emphasis in that. Went down and worked in Las Vegas for a few years, and then came back up and worked for Linden, and then I worked for Mountain Land Association of Governments. It's kind of like the Southeast Association of Governments down here. And I moved up from being a planner that just went around to all the small communities in Utah, Wasatch, and some of the counties, and then moved up to be the director, and I retired a couple of years ago and came to work for Horrocks as a planner there. So, certified planner, certified transportation planner, working on my NEPA certification through the university, which is actually one of them that they just cut.
I was gonna say.
So I have a very short period of work on that. Really, just say I've helped out these small communities, Goshen, Genola, Camas, all those places. So that's where my heart is.
Super. Well, thank you very much for stepping in and stepping up, filling in well. We're in this period of transition. Really appreciate having you on the team.
A couple more things though. So I wanted to bring up the agriculture ordinance, which I will be initially drafting, handing out to him too for a discussion item next time. Our discussion items were getting kind of lengthy, and I didn't know how this zone change was going to play out. Doesn't seem like we care about it, but just wanted to plan for that. Really quick, I know that the landscape ordinance is on for a discussion item, so I can go into it more deeply then. This is just a discussion item. I haven't redrafted it. This was the one that was presented to me. If you guys had watched if you guys happened to watch the commission meeting, I told them that I was gonna have a difficult time with what they presented to me pushing forward, but they do want it to happen quickly. So this is on for a public hearing for the next planning commission meeting, as directed by them. It's not the one. We understand that there was a more robust one, and we plan to incorporate that into a holistic land use code update. This is just something that they wanted to do in order to get community members the $2 or $3, whatever it is, money back for taking out their lawn. So that's all that's for. And I'll go into it further. And that's all.
You're helping, we've contracted you to do what now?
Planning and zoning,
Okay, stuff that are planning administrative.
yeah, everything from land use code development, subdivision code, general plan, site plan.
So you gotta be.
So he's going
Approval, so,
to,
yeah.
he's gonna help us out on our later discussion item. We have the water. I have him helping us out specifically on our general plan update for the water section.
And I taught planning at BYU for
Okay.
20 years. I take a class, and we just go around to different communities and help write their general plan, smaller communities and things like that, so.
Well, one thing I thought, we've had contracted out before with other organizations, they would be like, hey, can you meet with us for an hour in the past? And I really like when their consultants did that, so, you know, we seem to attend those.
Great. So you're just, so you're saying you would like me to meet with you, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like they would ask our
Yeah.
input, so because these meetings are kind
Yeah.
of tight, you know,
Yeah.
so it'd be like, hey, can you meet three, you know,
Sure.
we didn't have a quorum, like two of
Right.
us at a time,
Get an idea of where you're going.
and then they get our feedback.
Perfect. Yep, will do.
Super. Agreed. Is that everything? Super. We'll turn it over to Trish if you want to come on up for the county commission update.
Okay.
Let us know what's going on.
Let's see. So I met on the 27th with Department of Ag, and that's where we're going to be talking more about this water component, the conservation element of the general plan, and these ag protections that Chrissy just mentioned. So that will be coming, and both of those are not the ag protections, but the water element is a state mandate that has to be done by the end of the year, just so you guys understand where that's coming from. It wasn't coming out of the commission or anything else. It's basically, it has to be done. So we were contacted by Department of Ag to like, hey, do you guys know you have to do this? What can we do to help you? And then the ag protections, basically UDAF offers ag protections in a lot of realms, but not unless we have an ordinance in place. So these ag individuals that want to say, let's do a conservation easement or protect my land from eminent domain, things like that, we need an ordinance in place locally for them to then take advantage of those protections offered by Department of Ag. As far as the county commission update, just real quick on the first, we passed the ordinance amendment for the land use code, HVHO. It passed via the recommendations from the planning commission. So well done. It was a vibrant discussion. As you can well imagine, it did pass 6-1. I did make a substitute motion to stick with the 80-20 and to reduce the radius. That substitute motion failed, and so the other motion passed. So, and I should add that it passed with these additions, and I'll read them. Don't ask me to dive into them. Add notice of interest recorded at the title with the title company at time of sale to ensure that the buyer is a qualified household. 2, amend section 4 under definition to a person's work history for the past 2 years prior. 3, under section 3, who has to contact each renter on an annual basis to make sure that the household is qualified for. Deed restriction goes with the lot or unit. 5, AEH has to be an aggregate of 9 months. And then 6, they were just pending legal review, that all of that needed a little bit
So
of
to
update.
clarify on that one, what he was, my interpretation of that was that they didn't want, when we agreed that we would do the 50-50 split, they didn't want it to be first come, first served. They wanted it to be dictated to specific units that would run with the land. So that's what that amendment was, so that it wouldn't be a competition within itself. It would just be.
So I think overall it went well, and I really appreciate, again, I think that you guys really laid kind of the foundation for that to pass the commission without much hubbub. So I appreciate that it really went down here. So, that's about it.
Thank you, Jen. In that case, we're gonna move on to public hearings. I always need this reminder, Chrissy D. You give us a staff update about the public hearing before I open the hearing? Okay, so I'll turn it back over to you.
And I am going to turn it over to Andrew.
In the sun, that's neither.
Oh, that's the ordinance.
So what you have with your staff reports that were sent out, but essentially this property, they've requested to be part of the overnight accommodations overlay. And they had previous vesting under the multifamily residential 20. So the overlay puts additional requirements on the property versus what it would be without that. And there's some things that they have to have. They have to have electric charging stations for vehicles. They also, one of the things that's required is 80% of the power needed for that property needs to be generated on site. And they request for a waiver of that. And that may be something that you want to go back into the code and see if that's kind of where you want to be, because that's a pretty tough commitment to do the 80% on there. So they're asking a waiver on that. And then there's also the assured housing, which I think doesn't apply, but they're still requesting the waiver on. It's 2.1 acres. It was 2.3 acres, and then they have the detention basin on the north side of the property. And so that leaves the remainder of the 2.1 acres, and they're requesting 24 units on those 2 acres. Like you in the background, or you in the?
When you mentioned the assured housing, does that was meaning the local workforce housing for?
Yeah.
And is that local workforce housing? Was that low income local workforce housing or any income level?
I think it's any, yeah, and it's based off of the impact that these units would have on the need for workforce housing.
Right.
So it can't be like, oh, we just need some generally because we've got to make up a deficiency. You have to look at that and say, because of these units, what is the requirement to create workforce housing?
Right. There's a strict proportionality test on this, and 24 units.
It's hard to,
It would be hard to require that with only 24 units, particularly in an area exactly where it is. That would be a hard burden. I want to say this really quickly. I'm speaking from planning staff, not legal, not the attorney's office. But that would be a really hard burden. There's lots of case law associated with it, and additionally a number of advisory opinions on this. So
Let me ask you, but you don't necessarily have to build workforce housing. There is a way to pay money that goes into assured housing, which would seem to be possible to do.
yeah, you can do fee in lieu. Again, the requirement though, it would still be that proportionality test. It's still an exaction, and it would still require the proportionality test too.
And when you say it requires a proportionality test,
So that means, oh, you want to talk about it? Or?
because it's certainly in the code as written. If you build 50, you pay so much. If you build 24, you pay so much. If you build anything that's over $800,000 of development, you pay so much. So, but you're talking about some other kind of proportionality?
yeah, so you have to show that you've got these units, 24 units. But for those units, you have enough workforce housing. Because these units are coming in, then you have to say, because of these units and solely these units, how much more workforce housing do these 24 units require? And so you can do it with retail, fast food restaurants, things like that, right?
Gotcha.
This is gonna be tough because you'd have to show that there's, I guess, the housekeeping services or what will be required with that. But then the other thing that you run into is when you start charging the fee, you have to be able to, one, you can't make up any deficiency. So you have to say, okay, we've got what we need, and any new development comes in, that makes up for the deficiency. But then you also have to spend that within like a 6-year period, because otherwise they can put money aside, and if it's 40 years or 50 years, right? And so that's one of the problems that they run in. Wasatch County ran into this quite a bit, where they were having money put aside, but then they still couldn't afford.
I mean, my puzzlement is that if you just can't do it because you don't know how much you're paying really is what's needed to care for the workers who are going to be brought on board, it would mean, well, then you don't have the assured housing thing at all. Because if somebody brings in 1,000 houses, you still don't know what it is. But my guess is this went through legal review and they thought it was reasonable when this got passed. So I'm a little at a quandary here.
So I'm just gonna jump in real quick as a reminder to everybody, while the public meeting has not yet been open, let's keep our discussion purely, no, that's okay. The technical information and background is exactly what we need at this point in time. We just want to make sure that we're keeping it on technical aspects, figures and facts and legal statements.
Well, and I can say that there were aspects of assured housing that have been struck down in court.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's where the county was requiring a fee in lieu and we stopped because we couldn't do it anymore. The issue is that we can require it but we have to show that what we're requiring it, that these units, these specific units for this one are creating that need.
And my only point was
Yeah,
that'd be difficult if you had 1,000 units.
yeah, it is difficult and that's why I didn't hold up a court.
And I'll respond later in terms of how that will probably influence me in terms of my evaluation of this project. That's later.
Thanks, Doug.
And there may be other avenues to accomplish what you want to do with the workforce housing. There may be other ways to do that through like the Crown program or several of the rural self-help housing, et cetera, that could possibly provide for that.
Aaron, you had your hand up.
You know what? Well, wait.
If everybody's satisfied so far with it. Yes.
No.
Chrissy?
I'm good.
All right, super. Well, in that case, the time is,
You want the applicant to speak?
oh, sorry, Curtis. Would you like to come up and make a statement before we open the public hearing and deliberate?
Yeah, let's see you for a quick back. Well, it's good to see everyone again. It's a much more friendly crowd than my last application. But, you know, I'll start off, you know, I know overnight accommodations are they can be a tough issue. And I served on the county commission when the moratorium was put in effect and when it closed and when the overnight accommodations overlay was put in place, and played a major role in those negotiations and that legislation. And the idea was that we have certain areas in the community that were already built out for overnight accommodations, and that we wanted to kind of protect those and grandfather some of those areas in and restrict it elsewhere. And for new projects, the overnight accommodations overlay is the most, I don't want to say aggressive, but I mean, the highest bar, in my understanding of regulations for lodging projects. And the legislative discretion that these overlays give, the commission and its advisory boards is to set that high bar for lodging developments to have to come to that or as close to that and just kind of really raise the level of lodging development in the valley. And that was the intent in the lodging moratorium, was a pause so that we could raise the bar and raise the standards, because there were certain projects that came online at the time that folks thought were kind of beneath our market and we could do better. And so this is, I think a rare circumstance of that. And it's a parcel that is, entirely surrounded by existing overnight accommodations, and with a local developer. And, I think it's a circumstance of where it's been grandfathered in. It's just having a minimal impact, based on what's already occurring there, and both in terms of workforce, but in infrastructure and quality of life and everything. And so we certainly felt it appropriate parcel for this and wouldn't bring it forward and spend the time and money if we didn't feel like this really fit kind of that niche of what the county commission is put on the books in terms of what they feel like is appropriate. And so I spent some time on the narrative document. I hope everyone's had a chance to review it. It's a pretty significant, it's over $300,000 in annual tax revenue between TRT and property taxes. At today's values and tax rates, at full build out, 24 units it's not enormous. It's big enough to be something, but small enough not to be, a really, really large project. We're complying as best we can, to the aspirations and that high bar and the OAO, while still allowing feasibility. We're half the density, that's allowed, so we're not coming in and trying to stand up a massive condo building and really strive for the highest density we can. It's I think a very thoughtful layout. What we envision is, these are larger townhouses, but they're definitely intended to be high end. And what we're finding is, like on the newer high end product, like there's actually a couple of lots that my partner and I built on in Southgate, which is one of these grandfathered in areas. And the nicer, newer stuff is the occupancy and the performance of them as lodging units is doing really well. So the market is, wanting nicer stuff. A lot of the older inventory that's just kind of this, early 2000s dated stuff. I mean, you're going to start to see some of that kind of, I think, fall off because, it's just not in demand in the market. And so this is absolutely high demand. We're very comfortable with it. In all honesty, I think it fits kind of what was put in place for the OAO. And I want to show you all grace because I know it's tough voting on, nightly accommodations projects. And there's just been a couple really approved since this was put in place. They were both local developers and they were small and kind of unique. And I think this fits that really well. So thank you for your consideration.
It's okay, Chair, if I could just add that with the engineer and some of the other stuff, we need to have more detailed site plans, et cetera, so that we can approve those. But this is just the application for the overlay.
Just a reason. Yep. Yeah, that's an important point as we go into this. We're considering just the rezone. So we're thinking about the lot, the density, and the acreage and its location relative to adjacent lots, but not so much the color of the roof.
Right, not site plan approval.
I think if any of you have gone to look at the parcel, I hope you do, because I think it really speaks for itself. I mean, it really stands out as already dedicated to that use and, not really much of a change in terms of what's going on in the area. So thank you.
Thank you, Bears. You bet. Appreciate it.
One thing really quickly that I forgot to mention, it was noticed appropriately and the development agreement that you guys have in your packet will change based upon whether the exception is approved. That's why it's a draft.
What exception?
The exception for the assured housing
So that'll be.
and the energy. And it would just be part of the development agreement. Oh, the signs had apparently at one point been knocked over. Those were replaced and then they were knocked down again. So I just wanted to make sure that those were posted. We have pictures of them posted.
Best effort to try.
But the signs were thrown down at some points.
So you were saying the assured housing thing is separate than the rezone?
No.
No, so the development
So-
agreement, the current development agreement that you guys have, I don't know if you guys read development agreements, I would because I'm nerdy, but the development agreement that's in there says some stuff that doesn't include the exception for the assured housing that we're
It doesn't.
asking. It doesn't, yeah.
Because I was looking at the ordinance and I did not see that in the ordinance. So let's say I passed that, or let's say we recommend it.
Mhm.
Where does that lead the exception?
It just is accepting this property and we added to the development agreement that it's an exception of what we're allowing. So we're allowing it with this exception.
What we vote on though, have in front of us has that exception in it.
Right.
And that's what we get passed on to
There
Grand County
with that
Council.
exception, and it may be something that we need to take a look at and make sure that the actually is maybe a little bit more in compliance with what you want and what can be done.
Okay, so, thank you very much, everybody. At this point, it is 5:05, and I'm going to open the public hearing for Meador Drive rezone for OAO residential. Do we have a motion on the floor either to approve or recommend or not recommend in the affirmative or negative, right? The rezone. I'm sorry, I don't have the actual draft of the motion in front of me. But in order to begin substantial discussion, we need to have a motion on the floor.
I'll put that motion forward. I move to forward a recommendation approval of the overnight accommodation to overlay residential partial 0200270027 based on the following findings. And I would also like to put an amendment on that.
Sure, you can lead with amended.
So the amended motion would be without the exception for the assured housing. That's where I would like to start it, and I would like, under the interest of job creation and economic diversification with, it's economic activity. I would put it like that. So that's my findings.
I'll second the motion.
So to be clear and in plain language, we're entertaining now a motion to approve this rezone without the exception for the assured housing. This would still make
Your recommendation for,
a recommendation for approval, thank you. Without that exception, so the assured housing, workforce housing part would be included. Do we have, any discussion, justification, anyway?
Obi seconded. I didn't know if you caught that.
Yeah, Obi seconded a motion by Linda.
I may actually ask for one more thing, but since there is this kind of amendment from what this looks like, I just think that this needs the assured housing component. I think it was put in there in many ways for workers that are needed to support, there's another person at the gas station, not because of 24 houses, but the cumulative impact. So otherwise, it's death by 1,000 small cuts, 24, 24, 24, 24, you got almost 100. So I think this is was meant to say, we're gonna have to share in doing something about the cost of housing for people who are gonna be needed to serve this place. That doesn't mean right directly, but somebody gets hired in a recreation position. Somebody gets hired as a low-level nurse at the hospital. Somebody's at a gas station or the food or at the market. So I think this was decided upon originally because it was thought people need to pay their share if we're going to have more overnight people, because it's one of the reasons we're probably in this problem of having a lot of service workers. So I really think that's important to do. It can be done either in lieu, which might be the easiest way to do it, or in houses, which probably is a more difficult thing to do. I'm not so sure. The only other, and I would agree with the applicant, this is a really good place to do this. if one wanted to get overnight rentals through, this is the kind of place you should do it. It's in the OEO zone. So this isn't a rezone. But I do think this assured housing is very important for the community. And I really don't know much, I wouldn't probably vote against this because it isn't supplying 80% of its power at the location, although I think it would be a nice thing if it did. I think the thing about an exception, I think the one I read in whatever it was in 6.15 point whatever said, yeah, you can have an exception to this kind of assured housing thing, but it's if you have kind of a natural disaster, a flood, a fire, it burns your place down, and you reconstruct, you shouldn't have to then put extra money into supplying new people for this property that's just gotten reconstructed. So I support this motion. Except I'd be interested in discussions about energy too,
If I could
and
just,
anything else.
it's okay to comment on.
I think so, yeah.
So you made a great point that it's not a rezone because it's an overlay district and it just falls on there. So technically, in most places, that's not a rezone. In the Grand County Code, it's actually identified as a rezone in the code, but generally that's not.
I will take back my statement about it.
I just want to
Correct.
make everybody clear on that.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it is like a little quirk that we have in the way our code is written. Hopefully, we'll get those things fixed in the future. Aaron, you
I did a little, I didn't not know about the court problems with the assured housing. I used our own metrics with the land use code, and I came up with, there would need to be 4 deed restricted workforce housing units or around a 250,000 fee in lieu contribution. And so like our current pot of money for that is at about 100,000. And I think that we would like to start using the county. I think we would like to start using that money for research on the studies. And I just
during
think,
land for land trust.
Yes, that's what.
yeah, so, I mean, I get the legal stuff and all that, but that's where the back of the napkin math, using our land use code, what I came up with on there was about $250,000.
It was hard to know because it was in square feet.
Well, I added all the square feet up and then I did the low income thing. So that's what we're talking about. And I'm like, that would put our little trust from 100,000 to 350,000. So otherwise, and I gotta say this about nightly rentals. I used to be like, oh, I hate nightly rentals. They ruin the economy. I have changed my mind about nightly rentals. I have serviced Olive Rim Village a lot. I see a lot of locals own a unit, and that's like, I see a lot of like just normal people. They have a nest egg, and instead of paying somebody a crap wage cleaning these places, all that, somebody's actually like has their own cleaning business. I think nightly rentals like offer better wages than a lot of hotel. So this is why I'm in favor of it.
So I tend to sit with Aaron on this one and support your motion, primarily, first and foremost, because of it's very obvious this is exactly the kind of place this development would and should go. I would rather it on these 2 acres than maybe any other 2 acres in the county that I can think of. The second thing is the projected tax revenue that comes from this project. That's not a small number, $300,000 a year in property tax counts. That's GCAT. So
At the end.
yeah. And so that's a significant tax revenue. And when it comes to the assured housing, what's the technical term for the fee in lieu? The fee in lieu thing. would rather move that we don't grant that exception and then let the commission strike it down, because we're starting to get into a little bit of scope creep for the planning commission when it comes to the fiscal business of Grant County and how we generate revenues. I like the idea of sticking to our land use code as this body. And then when it comes to things like, do we want to generate money that way? Are we worried about a lawsuit this way? I like to put those decisions into the hands of the elected bodies and not the advisory bodies. That's just talking about civic theory. So I like Aaron's motion exactly the way it is. I also agree with Obi. It would be a fun exercise to debate the 80% energy generation on site concept. I don't know that we could do it for this many of these type of units on 2 acres. The entire place would have to be a solar field. And that's just, I would love to have that conversation. It's just there are physical constraints here that are like, that's an obvious non-starter for a lot this month. So those are my thoughts on the thing. Otherwise,
Somebody else should speak.
I want to give everybody else a chance to weigh in.
I just want to say there's a pickleball court on there too.
Laura, is your hand up?
Yeah. So I was going through the section 6.1.5 a little bit, and there's you either build the affordable units or you pay the fee. But I guess I'm a little confused on this legal technicality thing that they get an exception to not do that. Can you explain that a little bit?
You talking to me?
Maybe Chrissy or the new guy.
So it's just kind of that theory of impact fee that you are charged the fee based off of your impact on the service. So like you say, we can know how much we need in sewer plant. We know how many gallons of water we need in culinary water, et cetera. So that's a pretty easy one to do. And even trip generation for transportation roads, that's also pretty easy to do. They got a whole manual on that. But when it comes to the housing, will be will be more difficult because of, are there lots of the workers that work there, et cetera. So it's kind of that, what is that demand? What do you have? What do you generate? If they're higher paid individuals versus lower paid individuals, those things all have to work into it. And so it has to be directly proportional to what that is, but you also can't make up any existing deficiencies. That's one of the things you have to say, hey, we already have what we need, and then as new development comes in, then they would need to add to that. So that's one of the things you have to look at, and I don't know what that is. But then the other thing, and this just comes from Wasatch County, they had housing authority for quite a while, and they were receiving fee in lieu of actually building affordable housing. And then they looked at it, and the guy that's doing it was just a part-time, he's just doing part-time as an accountant and stuff. And it's like, the money they're getting in, there's no way they could build for what was coming in, because then it would be delayed, a couple of years, and by then the prices have increased past what interest rates would increase. And so you would still be bound to build that, but you just wouldn't have all the money to do this.
For general reference, you can go back to that little land use code book primer that we were given a few months ago and read the chapter on exactions, which is something that I didn't know about before I got that book. We're talking about exactions.
And then one quick thing, so you can't use like a formula-based generic imposition for this. That's what has been struck down. And so because of that, that's why staff is saying on this one specifically, if there's a hotel, it makes a little more sense because there is direct impact. Whereas something like this, where there's no full-time workers, there's not a worker existing because of this. So, and it's that direct formula-based imposition without individual specific
Workers aren't
analysis.
employed by this, they're That's a
Yes,
home facility.
yes. So that's why the staff is saying that.
I totally agree with this rezone, because when they went through this process 15 years ago, this was a part of it. And when Chrissy said this is coming up, I thought that already happened, that was already there. So this is something, and exactly like everybody said, it's in an area that deserves it. I also love the fact that we need to let the big dogs take on the part that I thought each was ready for. So I agree with this one.
Well, Jerry, I want to let you guys all weigh in.
I recuse myself.
That's right. Thank you, Jerry.
That's right.
I think everyone's kind of, I agree with what everyone said. I also think staff recommendation on that. I agree with you. This is not something that planning needs to worry about. Let the commission sort that out. But this has been grandfathered in. This is a perfect location for this. It does generate an additional 300,000 volunteers. That's a lot. That's more than we can speak for at the moment. So I have no issue moving forward.
Super. Well, in that case,
I'm just new, so I'm sweet. I don't have, like, you can like go completely against any staff recommendation and it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, that's why we put these out here. And then you're the ones that make a decision, so don't feel like there's any,
of course,
don't against the recommendations.
we're here in Grand County. We're pretty well used to not listening to others.
We do value it though. We do not listen. We appreciate it.
But we really do, and sincerely, we do appreciate your work and your advice.
Bless your heart.
To reiterate, I try to guide folks at this level of the civic process to focus on the letter of the law and not wild cards so much. Let people who are more accountable than we really make things like exceptions happen. That's my theory there. So I would entertain a vote to restate it, the motion as moved by Aaron to send a recommendation for the Meador Drive rezone as stated, with the exception that the assured housing exception will not be included. All in favor of that? Aye. That was unanimous with Jerry recusing himself. So that's that. Super. And that was the only public hearing we had tonight, folks. So it is 5:21. I'm gonna close that public hearing and it will be on to the county commission tomorrow. It's where that will be heard. Their public hearing lasts for 10 days, right?
Yeah, so that one will close. It'll open tomorrow. It'll close, well, not by 10 days. It closes Wednesday at 5.
Super. Thank you.
Following Wednesday.
8 days. Just like that, read into the record for folks who come back and listen. Moving on to discussion items with Chrissy. We've got the Grand County General Plan Water Plan element. Thanks for coming, Curtis. And to reiterate what Trish said earlier, this water plan element update is ticking time bomb, sort of. The Utah legislature is mandating that we update this part of the plan by the end of the calendar year. And so it's one of those things where we've got other duties as assigned, right? Take it away.
Go for it. Yeah, this is you.
I'll talk about it
Time to
until,
shine.
yeah, you can kick me until we be quiet. So, as Trish said, that this is a requirement from the state legislature. They passed it a couple of years ago, required this. A lot of communities focused on their affordable housing plans because that had last year, 2024, deadline for that. And this is 2025 deadline, but December 31st. And then, so we had the original, I think it was SB 110, and then that was followed up with SB 76 the following year to define that a little bit more clearly. But essentially, it's a water use and preservation element of your general plan. So it's not conservation, although you have to look at the conservation plans But one of the things that they required by state law in the second bill was to have a closer look with the water districts and water providers and making sure that you've got that before you go to the public and all these kind of things. Now, most of the data is readily available through water conservation plans, but I think you have to have your water conservation plan, I think is also required. It's required every 5 years, and I think it comes due the end of this year. So there may be some overlap with that, but typically you can use the information that you have out of your conservation plan to create the chapter, which is a preservation chapter. So instead of like reducing usage, this focuses a little bit more on preserving what you have. But in order to do that, they want you to look at reducing the per person or per household demand so that in the future, 10 years, you're not using more water than you're using today. So that kind of will keep that down a little bit.
So I don't want to cut you off. I do have a point of clarification for folks who, the difference between preservation and conservation in this context in layman's terms, and correct me if I'm wrong. When we talk about water preservation, we're not talking about keeping water in the Glen Canyon aquifer up on the side of the mountain. Hypothetical numbers, if we have 100,000 acre feet of water allocated in this valley, we want to preserve our right to access 100,000 acre feet. That's what preservation means. It's not stock ponds and elk and aquifers. That's allocated water rights versus conservation, which is more just because, you know, to get to in layman's terms.
Yeah, and then in the bill, they kind of, or the information's put out by the Department of Water Resources that came to add to that the way to get there is through conservation to preserve that allocation for the future.
It's just a little bit of a reverse the rules of what conservation and preservation means when you learn about it in environmental science.
That's actually defined in the
Right at the start, yeah.
page 21.
I didn't know that. They're very good. I've been busy, I'm sorry. In case you know, there's a lot happening. Yeah, so,
And I guess,
sorry, please continue. I didn't mean to.
sorry, because this is a amendment to the general plan, is an element or chapter of the general plan. It requires public hearings at the planning commission and county commission levels, as well as we have to have meetings with the water groups.
The 3 districts.
Yeah, 3 districts. And so when you back that up to say adoption by the end of December, you're probably really wanting to adopt it the 1st of December. Well, in order to do that, you've got to have stuff, you know, in line in October. And that gives us August to work with the communities, or the water.
Yeah, so basically, we have to start doing this now.
Yeah.
So that's why we're bringing it to you now. We're hoping we get your blessing to go ahead and start, and I can hand it off, and so I don't have to write it. I think he is more than qualified to write it. I also think that he's willing to engage with all of you to help with it, with drafts, and we can work through discussion items throughout the months of August and September with public hearings scheduled for October, is my timeline on this.
I'm gonna say thank you. I plan to, for this discussion item, we'll just like do a straw poll in favor of starting this as soon as we can. I know that Aaron and Obi and I probably have some similar ideas, things we've talked about in previous meetings with water, and I'll do my best to synthesize it, and then you guys add to it in any way that you want. A conversation that we have had that relates to water efficient landscaping, just energy efficiency, water use, preservation and conservation is, I think maybe the best word is by policy or by plan. The county finally settling a longstanding and rather confusing debate between the state and the U.S. Geologic Survey about exactly how much water is available in our system and exactly how much water is allocated. through adjudication. There's, some people say we are at capacity, some people say we're at 50% capacity. And as we develop this water plant element, I think it would be good for the county to come out and not enough of a water scientist to say, I think it's what they said, or I think it's what they said, but to like settle the conversation for a second, at least in our plan, like this is how much we're planning to use, because we need to have some settled baseline when we think about this future development. I hope that it can be developed as accurately to real world system yield as possible. But we do need to actually have this is how much water this is how much we can support. So I mean, no heavy big work or anything.
Use it or lose it, kind of that they've had in the past with the state water engineer. I think the legislature's seeing that there's a need for whether it's counties or municipalities or whatever to be able to have water, or like hoarding it or something like that, but that they're also planning for the long-term use of that. And not just immediate.
We need just, as a body, I think we need a baseline to say like, okay, this is how much water we're saying is there with the best data that we can come up with.
There's a big difference between how much water is in the reservoir today, how quickly it's being depleted or added to, and how much we're using.
Yes.
And that's one thing I like about this is they concentrate on how much we're using.
Yep.
And it's, Obi, I read that report you sent me, and it, as far as I know, we still aren't we don't have long-term data on the reservoir itself.
We can see that at the very start. Very start of what you started to say. Obi?
Yeah, the report that you gave me, I've read through.
Oh, yes, the hydrology report.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And we,
They're ones that probably say, oh, well, you might be close to what you've got. But, water conservation is great. And of course, when you really want to confuse the situation, then you say, so climate change, what's its role in it? I mean, it's just these nice conservation goals that might just keep you up with climate change, might not provide for new growth. So it is a great, complicated task. I did just want to mention, it is wonderful to see their little outline here, how to reach out to your public utilities. And the deadlines start March 1st, and then what you do March 1st. So you notice that also, it will have to be crunched quickly. And yeah, I don't know how the county decides which one to believe. I think the state engineer thinks, there's maybe 1,500 acre feet more water up there than the hydrology article says, and it's tough.
in any case, my point was, what I like about this is it talks about water usage, and that is something we can control.
We can do that, exactly.
It's a good place to start.
Super. Well, just to, don't want to, Aaron,
Oh, I had some questions for you.
Sure.
That's fine.
Please go ahead.
So how many, you're working with other municipalities with this? Okay, so is it like pretty boilerplate? You just take what you did before? Or?
It depends because a lot of places, they only have the one water provider where you've got three districts. But there's certain things that you have to have in there that you can pull the data. You don't have to create new data, but you can pull the data from the conservation plan that you have. And that makes it easier that way. But again, it's going to be dependent upon each community and usage of each community. That's going to be unique to that. And that's why we meet with the water districts to get their idea of what is needed.
What do you think? What I see in these is I'm looking at your brochure, right? And it's I see things like, let's say, proactive approach linking water availability with development approvals.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that there's a wide range of what that means.
Right.
are you going to be like, how do you determine what works for Grand County with that?
Yeah, so a lot of it's gonna be based off of existing use and if there's conversion from agricultural to municipal use. And what is it they say within the state? I think something like 80% at least is used for agriculture statewide of water resources that we have. And so you have to look at that. You have to look at the conservation plan, and it's going to be basically meeting with you folks that know everything about the county, plus the county commission, plus the citizens as well. But a lot of it's going to be strongly connected with the water districts.
So what would you want from us? Like just when you're making this, you're like, oh, the planning commission, I want to run this past you, or what?
Yeah, and so first thing I do, I'll go through your water conservation plans, and like I say, the one I think the Grand County one is still needs to be done by the state on a 5-year basis. But pulling in any of that information, et cetera, contacting you folks to see where other information is, the staff, et cetera, and just basically get going on as soon as we can, so that we can set up these deadlines of when we have to have certain information, we have to have drafted.
Okay. Yeah, so I just
Because of the
wonder.
General plan update, I think it would be appropriate to have public engagement, at least one or two.
Yeah.
Where we set it outside of commission, maybe
Yeah.
a park or something, where we invite the public in to view it, look at it, a draft, and see if they have any contributions. That's why we want to start it so much earlier.
Yeah, I guess I wonder where it's like, where there's like political questions versus like, this is just how it is, or is there like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're gonna ask us for advice on things, it's like, well, should we have a landscape ordinance or not, you know? Do we want to, everybody has lawns or not, there's is there gonna be questions like that? Or like,
Yeah, I think that's going to be part of it that you need to look at is the water-wise landscaping and commercial, industrial, or even in residential zones. You talked about the buying back the sod. So those are all just these are the recommendations that we have. These are the objectives that we want to meet, and then these are the strategies to be able to do that, to meet our goals. And so you have to work through, and you'll have certain strategies then when an application comes forward to you for a commercial use or whatever it is, then you already know how much water is allocated to that and how much is just the landscaping that's there for landscaping's sake.
I'm gonna kind of completely jump in line in the process and throw out a thing that I've been kind of squawking about for a little while as we develop this plan. There are legislative authorities, I can't cite the bill, but there are legislative authorities to establish in-stream beneficial uses on temporary change applications for the Colorado River, and through establishing things like water trusts. And so that option is on the table. Not a lot of people know that it's there, and it's something that I think would be curious to hear how the community feels about doing that, because we want to preserve our access to water rights. We also want to, on OB's side of the conversation, beneficial in-stream flows are a really difficult thing to find. And so it's a can of worms, but there are avenues that we can chase to do that. Just something to think about.
So one question I have is, Katie came up here earlier and spoke about the effort that was put into this. And I went through this, all of the information in the handout earlier today. And in fact, some of the things in there that I think Katie was referencing, we actually addressed with her changes earlier, a year or so ago. So how do we make sure that we use her work or we integrate the output of all of the work that she put into that in our next round?
Yeah, so I don't have that information, so hoping I can get that from her and bring it all together. One of the things that they say in planning is we take other people's fruit and make our own jelly. So there's things from the engineers, things from the water folks, things of this, and we put it all together and kind of try and get that to work together.
Well, don't really want to beat a dead horse, but I would say, like, I'm ready to take a straw poll to say, like, we support the planning staff pursuing this water plan element and the requisite or recommended public engagement post haste. Yeah?
Yes. Great.
All in favor? There we go. Let's whack it.
I appreciate that, you guys.
I'd like to also just thank Katie for spending her own time coming here and talking to us today and offering to spend more of your own time helping us wade through this. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And I wanted to say one thing also, but I'm worried it's getting out of order. I do think as she meets with Melody, there should be somebody from the planning commission
Well, we can,
who's
I guess,
interested in that.
we just finished up the water plan element thing and we're
Yes.
about to talk about the landscape.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We're about to do that. So I guess we can just like take it away, Obi. But for the sake of time, Trish, did you have something on the water plan element thing?
Yeah, just,
Okay.
just Andrew, I think if you, I don't know, Chrissy, how you guys want to do it, but if you do want to reach out to Tony or Obi or myself and like, to kind of connect him to other resources.
Sure.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, love that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
For instance, Castle Valley just had the USGS
Right.
do an entire water study. The best thing that we've had done is, I think it probably is finally published in final form. So it'd be very helpful probably.
But, moving on to the
I
topic.
didn't mean USGS, I meant UGS.
Utah.
Thanks, Utah.
The water efficient landscaping thing, props Katie Murphy. Obi, you were on the topic of the water efficient landscaping.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, let's.
I just thought it would certainly be important since these things are often generated by the planning commission for somebody from the planning commission. I wasn't necessarily volunteering, just that I thought it would probably be good for someone to be on that.
So let's give Kristen a chance to sort of like give us the background
Yeah.
of water efficient landscaping 2.0.
Yeah, so
how-
this was just sort of emailed over to me one day and said, "Look, this is a public hearing." And I read it and I said, what this says and what I think you guys mean don't really align. Let's slow down. We've got a lot of issues with our land use code, and I understand that the commission has their goals and their needs. And so I have decided that, we can make this work. It'll be on for a public hearing next time. It's going to be very simple. It's not going to be a large overhaul of this because that's not what the commission's asking for right now. And also I just don't have time to implement a new huge section of requirements while I'm trying to get through a pile of current applications. So with that, technically those current applications will be vested in the land use code at the time they were completed, I get that. But this was thrown at us, so we're going to work through it this way. I have not seen a copy of the previously drafted one. I know that it was very robust and it would require a lot of, anytime, the city is running into a situation where anytime a building permit is pulled, people suddenly have to re-landscape. Let's say that they get a hole in their roof and now we're also asking them to re-landscape their yard. And I don't think that that was the intent. And I don't think that that's even the intent of, what these should be for new developments, for commercial developments, I understand the points of what we're trying to do with landscaping and being conservative with water. So this one we're just trying to get through very quickly, and that's why it's very simple. If this one that we have is done and ready, and it's easier, then maybe that's something I guess I could discuss. But that's not what I was directed to do. So I'm kind of in a weird spot right now because I was directed to do this by commission. And specifically these 4 points. Melody made it sound like she was going to work later on a more robust plan. And that's what
Like I
how do
said,
you guys feel about it?
I'm recusing myself from material conversation about this draft ordinance for the sake of the commission and knowing how this stuff works. When these two items came to Chrissy on the email thread, they're like, put this on the planning commission agenda. And I have a conflict of interest on this one. I punted over to Mary, our vice chair, who on the civic process side of things is very much in alignment with the way I think, in that it's the chair or vice chair who sets the agenda for the body, and Mary elected to have these as discussion items rather than as immediate public hearings, because we sometimes get hit with a public hearing on a zone rechange. That's because there was an application, and that's an administrative process, and that just goes right to the top. But legislative decisions should come, not just water-based ones, but all legislative decisions, code changes, should have an opportunity for this kind of discussion. So that's what we're doing here. Like we said, post haste with the water plan element update, I would recommend we do a similar kind of process as to our feelings toward the water efficient landscape.
I mean, from a policy standpoint, I guess is what the question is. From a policy standpoint with this commission, would you, I mean, if you guys decide that you want to hold off and do the big one, you guys get to decide that. Or are you okay with the fast one? The 4 points or 5 points or whatever it will be.
And we do have a commission advisor.
Do you mind if I add just a little bit of context?
You are here to advise.
Mel did come to me some time ago and basically stated she had a friend that wanted, to be a part of the buyback program. I emailed you too, that was some time ago, and just said, put it on your long list. It, to me wasn't, and it explained again where the planning and zoning was. And so to me, this is purely my opinion. I don't think this is DEFCON 5 situation. So whether we want to throw something together right now so that a few people can get their lawns replaced, I'm not being, I think that's fine. But I also think, I know how much time, I spent a lot of time with Katie when she was working on that ordinance. Do we want to, delay it? And if Katie is willing to give a little bit of time, and we have some people, maybe from the planning commission, maybe from the county commission, I'm happy to work on, because I have already worked with Katie. So we could do that too. But I'm just kind of giving you the perspective when it says it came from the commission. That was, kind of my, the relationship or where it came to me. So I don't think it's coming in like it has to happen. But I, whatever you guys want to do. But just so you know, it wasn't like, didn't come from the entire commission as this has to happen tomorrow.
And one thing with the big ordinance, I think that Andrew and I are in agreement that the bigger ordinance could potentially, be concurrent with the general plan update, as they will speak to each other. And it does make sense to, adopt one, probably the general plan, which would dictate what our water usage looks like before we adopt a major overhaul on our landscaping ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Would this be something that would be in you're going to go through, not quite wrapping my head around everything you're doing, but would this be would we be like, all right, let's pass this now, make it so, put it in your thing? Is that something we could do?
Yeah, so you could do that because you just have so many vacancies in the department that I don't know who else you would.
I know somebody who's an awesome policy writer who wrote this whole thing up.
So anyway, yeah, it can be with that. I'm not a landscape architect or anything like that, so it would have to be that side.
I'm just wondering how to shuffle it. If we do, we're like, okay, let's do this. So, yeah, so a couple people can get their stuff going right now. And then we're like, clean this up and you guys take care of it, and then we adopt it.
Jump in real quick and just advise, again, on the technical side of civics, that it is less important to worry about what assignments are given to the planning administrator versus their consultant and whether or not they're going to get done. Because we start to bump into, and all due respect to your business, we start to bump into like there is a contract for services or a retainer or something where that's sort of Chrissy's determination within that department's budget, what gets assigned.
Well, could that happen though?
Could I assign, yes, I could assign certain things to, like, if something is given to me, I can say, hey, take this on for me.
Right, so what I'm getting at is just like time spent, right? You don't have time to do it. We've kind of, that's, and this is like, we all put our 2 cents in there. This is like a lot of our opinions and beliefs and whatnot have gone into this. I guess what I'm concerned about is if we like pass this thing now, like, okay, we just passed the bare minimum. That's good. Some people get there, but then there's no motivation for us to pass anything else in the future. And then it just gets sidelined. Oh, we're too busy. We were too busy to do this. So then we don't do anything. And that's my only hesitation to be like, I don't want to recommend doing this.
I will again say, and I think this is really important, and I'm going to keep saying this to both bodies. The land use code is a holistic document, and it needs to be adopted and addressed holistically. Going through and saying, I want to fix section 6 or article 6.15 or article 4.27 is what causes a land use code to break down. And I think that it's really, really important that we look at the land use code and we set aside money and a period of time where we start from the top. We set those 6-month resolutions where we say nothing is happening for this 6 months on these things until we get this rewritten. And we do that. We set a timeline and we say it starts here, it finishes here. We have this 18 months to work through it with our 3 resolutions where we go through each section and work on them, and that get done completely. And I think that that has been a priority for planning, and I think it's a really, the more I'm in it, the more I can see and everyone can see how broken it really is. And the reason it's broken is because we've broken it by taking pieces of our land use code and rewriting them, and then they don't work together.
I really appreciate that comment, Chrissy, and Obi, just a second. Again, on technical points here, when I had that conversation with Slavin Talent Management Consulting, one of the main points that I made with their headhunters was that there are very few people in our community that have a true mastery of the technical theory of land use and municipal planning. And I really think Chrissy's one of them. And I agree with her assessment of how a land use code breaks down 100%. And when she says stuff like that, she's exactly right. That's all. Just not about water or anything like that. But when we're talking about theory, and a reminder that this is a discussion item, not a public hearing. We're not going to hear a motion on this. We're just talking about it, and it'll be a public hearing next week. So think about that, and think about Chrissy's advice on how municipal planning works.
And I was just going to, at least for me, you've got the OAO in section 4 of the code, right? It's got all these things about what you should do to try to balance whether this project is important, it should be done because of its community benefits. And then you go to section 6, over in 6, I think 0.1.5, and you get to, here's a benefit. You're going to actually ameliorate the damage, some of the damage that might be done by adding 24 overnight rentals because you're going to do some assured housing. And when I said I might not vote for this if if that wasn't in there, it's, I'm trying to balance everything that's in section 4. And code section 6 is telling me another additional item that might happen. So it's just so interesting, because if you wrote those sections separately and didn't consider them all together, that's not the way to do a land use code. So I agree with you 100%.
Yes, Megan. Thank you.
I think, after listening to Katie, thank you for that. That was extremely helpful. I am not a huge fan of taking a shortcut and doing something just to get it done to come back and redo it later. I think this is, and I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate you explaining how this came to be, because that's also helpful. But if we're already taking what limited time and resources we have, when you already have your hands full to try to throw this together and make a presentation out of it, why don't we pause on it, get the input that we already started? Mel obviously reached out to Katie for a reason. Like, I think this is something that we should pause on and do it the right way the first time, so we're not having to circle back and continue to come back to these things, because I think that's gonna prevent us from moving forward on other land use code. And if we start that with one section, are we gonna do that with others too? Because they get thrown on our plate by the commission and because someone wants a revision on it. I don't know what that looks like, but I think if we take the time to go through these and do it the right way the first time, then we're at least setting ourselves up to where we're not going to have to continue to come back because we missed something, or we need to change something because it doesn't work with a different change that we've made on a different land use item.
In conservation practice, when we're talking about a pretty hefty intervention into an ecosystem, prescribed fire or using a new pesticide, I tell people that the scalpel is proud of the damage it doesn't do.
Write that one down, Chris.
I guess I had this thing though, where I defer to you on it all, but if you take what you're saying, whenever I touch the land use code, I should touch the whole thing.
Right.
And so I'm just saying, like,
And that's kind of what I'm saying. is
but
that
do we hire
I think we need to stop
80,000
touching the land use code. Let the land use code be what it is. We spent a lot of money on a general plan. The general plan should dictate what the land use code says, and then the land use code should exist. And then the general plan should be revised. And then that should speak to what the land use code looks like in, over time. And it should be that over and over and over again, instead of, well, let's go in and fix one thing
We talked about this
that
our
suddenly
last meeting,
breaks it down.
that a planning document is an aggregation of a very long and robust public comment. The planning document itself is a public commentary. And so in general, I don't care if we're talking about the federal level or local ordinance, statutory adjustments without public commentary are just bad theory. It's my thing.
I also think there's an appetite from the commission to get something done. And so it's like, it's broken, we're gonna redo it. Let's just do it so like people are.
No, the commission just needs to recognize that they need to put some money towards getting this land use code.
Yeah, and I wonder,
And
like,
don't worry about all
There
that
is
stuff.
money put aside. It is in the 25 budget. I mean,
yeah, what's holding it up?
I do have money set aside.
What's holding it up?
I'm one person.
Oh, no, okay, no. I mean, it's just funny. I put our whole land use code and general plan through ChatGPT and was like, here, write me a new one. And I was like, I got a new one and I was like, okay, I got this. Should we just go through each item and like review it and save the county $80,000? I mean, I was like, maybe we should just do that. I don't know, but that's beside the point. I think I read the general plan and it's like, this is a living, we're supposed to review the general or our land use code every year and make adjustments adjustments. It says that in the land use or the general plan. So I'm just saying, I don't feel like, I don't know, I disagree with that thing. I understand the meaning behind it and all that, but things show up and we're gonna be building out this valley very quick before like another general plan comes through, and it's like, I feel like we're adding something new, like
I want to
landscaping.
ask the group real quick if we're still talking about the actual
Yes,
landscape.
I'm getting to this. Something like landscaping is like so new and niche that we're going to lose opportunity if we don't act on something very quickly. Like we're losing opportunity. Every building that goes up is a lost opportunity for like water preservation and other things. But that's just me.
Just really quickly, one thing that I think that might be helpful to think about is that
At 6
when
o'clock.
we create ambiguity in the code, that's when we no longer have control of the land use code. So the reason that the courts have historically given a lot of deference to the land use code and to the body's ability to amend and have their own land use code, and they always defer to it, is because of the public process and because it is a document that gets a lot of vetting and then it's done and then it's not touched. When we keep touching it, even like little ways, and it suddenly breaks down, you've created enough ambiguity within that code that the whole thing falls apart and then nothing, we
Thank you.
can't hold it up in court.
Thank you, Chrissy. I'm going to use a little bit of chairman's prerogative here. It is 6 o'clock, where we may traditionally have offered an opportunity for a second public comment period when these get that late. It doesn't happen very often, but I think I'll open a second public comment period. And if you have that was really well done. If you can keep it to 3 minutes though, because after you speak your piece, I'm going to try and just move on because this is a discussion item and not a public hearing. So please weigh in again and let's chew on this for the public hearing later on, because as much as I like to debate theory, I really don't like it when anyone else debates theory. Go ahead, Kate.
For the record, my name is Katie Murphy, speaking as a citizen. I wanted to clarify what I see as a couple options moving forward with this. If we pass this amendment, this is an amendment to the land use code, just the same as the ordinance that I drafted would have been an amendment to the land use code. I think it makes a lot of sense to wait and amend it as part of a larger code amendment. Unfortunately, that would mean that people have to wait longer to be able to make use of the turf buyback program, so that's something to weigh. If we do want to move forward with moving forward with amending the land use code so that we can offer the turf buyback program sooner, I would suggest waiting just a short period, tabling this, allowing me to work with Melody and staff and whoever else wants to be involved. And I'm happy to offer all of the information that I gained from the process of writing the code to do a much simpler amendment that could be a fast, quick amendment, but would make a little bit more sense. In looking through this, I'm seeing a lot of things that are just going to cause problems. I'm seeing in the general requirements in the landscape and site plan, there's a lot of things that are being asked for, but it's not clear about how you prove that you've done this or how staff will check that the developer is planning on doing this. Number 3, proposed plant or organic materials to be used in each treatment area. Are we asking for species? Are we asking for where exactly it's going to be? Are we asking it to be drawn on a plan? There's other places in here that there's something on section 6 in irrigation. Where possible, irrigation systems shall utilize untreated irrigation water instead of treated water. Where possible is not something enforceable. Irrigation system design shall take into consideration the water demand characteristics of the plant or landscape materials used. How is that going to be shown? You know, is that going to be broken down on a plan into this is zone 1, this is zone 2, this is zone 3? Like all of that puts an added burden onto the applicant and also onto staff members. So, and that's going to be the case. It's going to be a burden that's going to happen regardless of which version gets passed. And so I'm just suggesting we put forward a version that's better thought out and it can be pared down. but that just works better in terms of actual application process.
I appreciate it. All right, water efficient landscaping, come ready to throw hands in 2 weeks.
And I think that to clarify, just because I just realized what's happening. So everything in black is already in our land use code. The only thing that's being added is E, the red. In the landscape ordinance one, everything in black is already what the land use code currently says.
That simplifies things. We have an update from Moab Area Housing Task Force. There's gonna be a town hall. Aaron, that's your thing, right? Take it away.
Okay, so, I've been involved with the Moab Area Housing Task Force. What I really think is important with the task force is we are gathering information. We're getting from the planning departments, like what's in the pipeline, how much is in the pipeline? Well, and then we have our housing survey, which is, the survey's going out. Hopefully we get 1,000 people responding. Oh, this type of housing's needed. No, we've met the missing middle, or we haven't, or what's the needs? What are people looking at, the needs? The other thing I think is interesting, we're gonna have a panel discussion to ask questions. I've asked Curtis, Rachel Moody and Ernie on the private side, and then Chrissy, we've asked her to be on the panel. Questions to be like on the private side, I'd really like to be like, yeah, how long is single family houses? Is the price coming down? What do you guys see? Because I think we all get the vibe with what's going on, but it's actually nice to see more official information going on. So I really hope you guys attend that, ask questions, and
one more time, what was the date and time of that?
it's July 30th
The 30th,
at 6:30 at the Mark.
14:30 at the mark. Super. I will try my very best to be there.
I think that was noted in the meeting packet.
It was.
Yeah, the flyer is on there that I sent. It's on the notes.
If anybody didn't jump that then.
No, I just, I've been away from correspondence. Thank you. Looking forward to that. There's also a housing survey floating around. If you haven't found that yet, it's all over the social media and stuff.
I don't give you dirty looks if no one here.
I already took my housing survey.
Hey,
I guess some people like. I'll say that to you. I got you.
So,
Grabbing over here.
a note that I had about future considerations that Trish mentioned in the commission report. Anticipate in later on discussion about an additional ag ordinance change to the land use code. That's also something that is from a state statutory compliance kind of thing. We need to think about this in order to be eligible for that. And we will learn more about that later.
That will be on the next discussion item at the next meeting.
Ag ordinance?
Discussion item.
I will be drafting that.
Agriculture.
I thought it said ag.
All right. Not so bad, guys, for a pretty bustling agenda. That was a good one. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move so.
I'll second.
All in favor? Super. Thanks, guys.
I'll send that to you when I get home.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
She looks like she's doing something.